As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and I rambled and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. The sun was shining as I was strolling, the wheat fields waving and the dust clouds rolling. The fog was lifting, a voice came chanting. This land was made for you and me. Everybody sing! This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. One more time. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. In the squares of the city, in the shadow of the steeple, near the relief office, I see my people. And some are grumbling, and some are wondering if this land is still made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever turn me back, 'cause this land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is mine. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
A new day. This is a new day full of sound and light and expectation. This day has been waiting for you. This day has been waiting especially for you, to embrace you, to guide you. This day has been waiting with open arms just for you. This is the day we have been given. Let's not waste it. Come now and let us worship together. Hello, everybody. My name is Reverend Joseph Boyd. It is my pleasure to welcome you here, and this is indeed your church. From California to New York City, to Colorado, to across the globe, in Brazil, in the Dominican Republic, and Europe, to all those who live in the vicinity of this special sanctuary here at 1105 Elm Street, this church now belongs to you. Thanks to this virtual technology and the work of our committed members, Tim Raridan, Lola Lewis, Andy Crabb. Such a pleasure to be with you on this post-inauguration Sunday. We have a very powerful service, I believe, talking about where do we go from here, chaos or community, post-inauguration, and also honoring the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. This is the 48th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and you're going to hear some powerful stories, and I have a little bit to say about it as well. So welcome. Welcome into this special place from wherever you happen to be tuning in. I hope if you're in cooler weather like we have here in Youngstown that you are nice and warm and healthy. If you happen to be zooming in from a tropical climate, I hope you are adequately cooled. We have many events happening, more than just even Sunday worship at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have events happening all the time. And even during worship, we have events for our young people. So if you have any children who are under the age of 18, there's going to be a link down in the chat box where you can connect them to people of their same age talking about very important things. So I'm going to read the blurb for today. This week, this is for religious education for our children. This week, the world watched as Amanda Gorman inspired all of us with her brilliant poem written for the inauguration. Especially inspiring is that Amanda is just 22 years old and has been creating beautiful words for years. She's the youngest National Poet Laureate ever. Let's explore the ways we can create art to heal and to make a better world for each other. Let's create a poem together. This is where we will continue the work of last week. They're going to be focusing, again, on the use of imagination in creating an anti-oppressive society for all of us. So if you have any children under the age of 18, there's a link for kids 15 and under, and there's also a high school link for 15 to 18-year-olds. Later this afternoon, or actually following service, if you have been very fortunate to join us over the last, I would say, 10 months, especially if you've never actually set foot in our sanctuary and know us through this virtual medium, I want to welcome you to join us immediately after the service. Karen Lapidus is going to be leading a newcomer circle where it's for newcomers, people who are new to this church, people who are new to our services and want to get to know each other a little bit and get to know the history of our church and where they might fit in terms of their own lives and their own capacity for service during this time. So you can join immediately following the service. You don't need to click anything. It's just going to happen immediately following the talk back. Please stay on. Karen Lapidus is a beloved member and also our membership coordinator. And she just has a really warm heart and a great curiosity. And so if you'd like to share your story about what your day is like, what your last 10 months have been like, why you attend this service, we would love to hear from you and get to know you. So again, that's going to be immediately following the service. Just keep tuning in and stay on. We also have later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time a foreign policy discussion. Martin Berger will discuss some aspects of German expansionist foreign policy before the Second World War. So Martin is a professor at Youngstown State University, and his classes on World War II are much beloved. He is a great historian and a great storyteller. So if you're interested in history, especially as it relates to our modern era, tune in for sure, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Zoom. I also would like to invite you to a very special meeting on January 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our church has been invited to take part in a town hall meeting, which is happening virtually, called the Next Steps Coalition. So the point of this town hall meeting is to focus on policing in Youngstown, Ohio. And we're going to have a meeting with current law enforcement, as well as community activists and faith leaders. The topics of the meeting will include policy change, addressing independent investigations, and also demanding that we have outside prosecution of police misconduct in Youngstown, Ohio, as well as mandatory federal investigations for any misconduct. So it's a very important meeting to be a part of. I feel very grateful that our church was specifically invited to join in. So again, this is January 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There is a separate Zoom link for this meeting, so you can get that link by contacting the office at office@UUYO.org, and I look forward to seeing you there. Now I'd like to go to Jennifer Ruth Boyd for our chalice lighting.
Every January 1st, I choose a word that I hope to live by in the coming year ahead. It's not so much a New Year's resolution, such as exercise more, worry less, or give up coffee. Like perhaps some of you, I've eagerly made such resolutions in the past and have had a good 3-week go of it before losing interest. Besides, I'm rather attached to that cup of coffee in the morning. This practice is more like choosing an intention, a hope, or a guiding spirit to accompany me through whatever the year ahead may bring, and buoy me up if I lose my way. And for that, a word, just a single word, seems at once specific yet expansive. As I ponder in January, what will be the mystery of the unknown paths ahead? My word for 2021 is imagination. It popped into my head and I said, okay, I'll go with that. When Joseph told me on an unrelated note that imagination happens to be UUYO's theme for January, it seemed like that word was speaking to me even more strongly. Watching the inauguration last Wednesday, I don't know if I could have imagined a more healing and hopeful ceremony. When Vice President Kamala Harris was sworn in, I felt tears stream down my cheeks. The kind of tears that, once having begun, show no sign of stopping, only waxing and waning between heartfelt musical performances and riveting speeches. Could I have imagined a woman vice president? A woman president one day? During Hillary Clinton's campaigns, I was well aware of the precariousness of her battle. No matter how learned she was about key issues or how authoritative her manner, the media focused on her clothes, her hair, her voice. Regardless of one's politics, couldn't we have imagined more? Last night, my sister texted me about the 1930s and 40s actress Hedy Lamarr, who was most famous for her beauty and inspiring such iconic roles such as Snow White and Catwoman. What she was never given credit for is that, in addition to her acting talents, Lamarr during World War II helped invent a type of naval combat communication called frequency hopping, which was a real breakthrough in wartime technology. Now, I consider myself a pacifist in most matters, but this was an example of a remarkable woman using her imagination to guide us forward in her art and in her inventiveness. Could we have imagined a new world buoyed by so many women on the inaugural stage? By the words of Vice President Harris, the singing of Lady Gaga and Jennifer Lopez, and the soaring, searing poetry of 22-year-old youth poet laureate Amanda Gorman. In our desire for a more inclusive world, maybe we all imagine this into being. That's where we start, imagination. Where will it take us next? We light this chalice to celebrate imagination, today and tomorrow.
Please join me in reading the covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Each month, we give to an organization that supports transformation in our community, which is the heart of our mission. In our church's historic commitment to the well-being of our community, We give 100% of our offering to those in need. UUYO's Give Away the Plate recipient for January 2021 is UUJO, UU Justice Ohio. They are a group of clergy and lay leaders throughout Ohio, offering congregations access to advocacy, training, and action around issues of social equity and equality. This year, UUJO has been critical in offering expertise and material to important local immigrant assistance programs that our members run. This month's Share the Plate will pay for our membership in UUJO. We will now receive the offering that supports the life of Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. With me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. Gonna be freedom in that land. Gonna be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. Gonna be freedom in that land. Freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Gonna be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. Gonna be justice in that land. Justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. Voices ringing in that land. Gonna be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. Singing in that land where I'm bound. Justice in that land where I'm bound. Freedom in that land where I'm bound.
At UUYO, we enter into worship by repeating the covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. As we depart our service, Reverend Joseph reminds us that the one great truth is, you are loved and never truly alone. I begin my remarks commemorating the Roe v. Wade decision of January 22nd, 1973, by stating my one true fact. In January 1975, in Brookline, Massachusetts, I exercised this right for myself. That I am never truly alone in this is reiterated in the plentiful sources of data and opinion which I feel misquoting today. So at the risk of revealing too much information, TMI, I offer instead the facts of my own personal historical experience. Warning, this story may contain examples of white privilege and myriad instances of flippancy. I attended a women's college in New York City, Barnard, from 1969 to 1973, which situates my experience in peak Roe v. Wade territory. We were the generation who believed we could have it all, and we hailed His magazine's founding in 1972, when Gloria Steinem left New York Magazine to found a new publication for, by, and about women. As young freshmen in 1969, at our first orientation meeting with our residence hall counselor, we had been shocked at the sharing of information about birth control, since most of us were convinced that we were going to remain virgins until we married. Within 2 weeks, our dorm mates learned that Maria, full of grace, had slept with David, whom she did marry after graduating in 1973, but not before having the distinction of the first among us to have an abortion. This procedure was by that time legal in the state of New York, though not in the rest of the nation. The couple divorced within a year of marriage. My Catholic boyfriend and I, uncharacteristically for the time and place, struggled with maintaining celibacy. After graduation, we went our separate ways. He to medical school, I to further study of Russian while employed as a secretary in the Department of Modern Languages at MIT. I eventually studied in 1974 for a semester in the Soviet Union, where I gained fluency in the language through the best known language learning techniques. Pillow talk, aided and abetted by the national beverage of choice. While abortion was definitely legal in the USSR, it was among the many deficits in the Soviet economy. So abortion was its major form of birth control. The average Russian woman could expect to have 4 to 5 abortions in her lifetime. The record I had heard tell of was 24, by which I would hazard a guess that the procedures were performed safely, though probably without anesthetic, which was also a deficit then. Fortunately for me, I became pregnant late enough in the semester to return home to the States, although my original plan had been to spend a year working as an au pair in France. I moved in temporarily with my parents, not, however, revealing my condition to them, and took on odd jobs in the Boston area. With the help of a college friend who had moved to Boston at the same time, I located a clinic, of which there were many, lining Commonwealth Avenue in Brookline. At its time, to quote Associate Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, Roe v. Wade was not a controversial decision. There were nonetheless restrictions. The Boston media in February 1975 was filled with coverage of the Edelin case, in which a doctor was on trial for manslaughter for performing an abortion on a young woman at 20 weeks. And a few years later, news coverage included the assassination of a doctor that had practiced on the same Commonwealth Avenue in Brookline. But my greatest fear at the time was the shame my pregnancy would have brought on my middle-class family, and especially the grief it would have brought my puritanical, actually German, grandmother. I am thankful that as a latter-day New Englander, I had no scarlet letter to wear for my sins. When I finally confessed to my UU parents a couple of years later, my mother's reaction was glad not to have known about it. My father was one of pride in his daughter's ability to navigate entrance into adulthood. As he enthusiastically supported my successes in the academic world, I, on the other hand, was far more ambivalent. After receiving my PhD at the University of Pittsburgh in 1984, I confided to my advisor's husband about my 30-something baby hunger throughout my graduate years. He remarked with conscious irony, "Then you discovered it was easier to write a dissertation." Such is the backstory to my arrival in Youngstown on the faculty of YSU in 1986, after a couple of years of academic nomadry. In my mid-30s, with very full tenure track responsibilities, partnering with a prospective co-parent had its own challenges. I was briefly affianced to a 40-something man with a teenage son who reminded me that I had made choices, thus implying that he had his right to his own post-parenting privileges. It takes a village to raise a child, the saying goes. Meanwhile, we have made single motherhood a socially accepted choice without public social responsibility. If the goal of family reproductive planning is to make sure every child is a wanted child, our society is not keeping up with its end of the bargain. In my research on the topic, I learned a phrase current in UU literature: reproductive justice. Herewith, I make common cause with my co-CLM minister, Gary Davenport. My story, I acknowledge, is one of privilege, but life choices, if honestly made, never feel easy to the decision maker. Our cause and respecting the worth and dignity of every person, which is our first principle, must respect decisions involving bearing and raising children, as well as those made by the individual whose emotional, physical, or economic circumstances lead her to decide she must terminate her pregnancy. Roe v. Wade is no more the beginning of the story than its end. Ancient Rome had its abortion stories, as I learned from the research of a YSU student in a course on women in the ancient world. After her death at 90, I found out that the grandmother, whose opprobrium I had feared in the 1970s, had supported her future sister-in-law in obtaining an illegal abortion in the 1930s. During meetings of a women's group held in this church, I heard the stories of older women, near contemporaries, recounting their own encounters with unplanned pregnancies and subsequent choices in pre-Roe eras. In hearing these stories, I found myself in communion with women of other generations. The women's movement of the 1970s taught us the phrase, "the personal is political." We must, in our civil society, make the political and the personal harmonize, or at least rhyme. In an interview I heard on The View or the PBS NewsHour, young poet laureate Amanda Gorman quoted older poet Audre Lorde. "There are no new ideas, just new ways of making them felt. It is ultimately the job of us in worship together to make these ideas felt so that the spirit of life moves us to righteous action." Amen.
Our just by noticing your breath, whether you're walking, lying down, or sitting. And let's just feel our body politic across the country and across the world.
Active hope is not wishful thinking. Active hope is not waiting to be rescued by some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way and are here to play our part. With active hope, we realize that there are adventures in store, strengths to discover, and comrades to link arms with. Active hope is a readiness to discover the strengths in ourselves and in others, a readiness to discover the reasons for hope and the occasions for love, a readiness to discover the size and strength of our hearts, our quickness of mind, our steadiness of purpose, our own authority, our love for life, the liveliness of our curiosity, the unsuspected deep well of patience and diligence, the keenness of our senses, and our capacity to lead. None of these can be discovered in an armchair or without risk.
If I could tell the world just one thing, it would be that we're all okay. And not to worry, 'cause worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. I will not be made useless, won't be idle with despair. I will gather myself around my faith, for light is the darkness most fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. And they're not yours, they are my own. And I am never broken. Poverty stole your golden shoes, but it didn't steal your laughter. And heartache came to visit me, but I knew what it was after. We will fight, not out of spite, for someone must stand up for what's right. 'Cause where there's a man who has no voice, there ours shall go on singing. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. They're not yours, they are my own. And I am never broken. Kindness matters in the end. Only kindness matters. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. I will get down on my knees and I will pray. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. And they're not yours, they are my own. And I am never broken. God's eyes, God's hands, God's mind. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's heart. We are God's eyes, God's hands, God's heart. We are God's hands, God's hands, God's hands.
I've appreciated talking with Melissa this post-inauguration and on the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. First, I want to say to those who have made the difficult choice to have an abortion, or if you know someone who has, that you are loved and most certainly not alone. For too long, religious leaders, family members, and friends have tried to limit the scope and depth of love. And in so doing so, have cast judgment and caused much harm, both on the individual body and on our body politic. On behalf of my fellow religious leaders, if this was your experience, we were wrong to do this, and I'm very sorry that you had to experience that. I say we because people have called me father in the past, as if I was a priest or I belonged to some other tradition. And I think what they see is a robe and a stole, and understandably what they see is religious authority. I think when you see this robe and this stole, it can be easily confused to represent hubris, judgment, and hurt. So I say we, because what people see is authority. I do think I, and really all of us here, have an immense amount of authority, often without realizing it. And it behooves us to respect that authority and to use it toward making this place a land where people can flourish rather than languish in judgment. So again, if you have ever felt left out of this circle of love, if you have ever felt expelled or left out of the circle of community because of your choice to have an abortion, my hope for you this morning is that you can see yourself again in this circle, a circle that actually you never left, whether you felt it, whether you feel it, or not. It is humbling for me to notice all the great unnecessary lengths we and institutions go to try to put limits on love. Especially in this era, post-inauguration, I think there is an opportunity to see all the limits we've tried to put on love and to see how it is all an illusion. It is very easy, too easy, to want to limit love to our own preferences. It is too easy, far too easy. to cast a circle of people who share our preferences, and to feel that everybody outside those preferences is somehow left out of the circle. We can live our entire life that way. We are witnessing generations, going back 4 centuries now, of people who have lived that way and creating pain and hurt for the next generation to carry in the wake of that decision, whether they were aware of it or not. But this is a special moment, and there is good reason to feel hopeful. There is good reason to look at the day we are living and the days to come with optimism. But the optimism must, I think, be rooted in something deep and large, something that is beyond our personal preferences and limitations. I have come to doubt that time is linear in the way that we have been trained to see it in the Western world. I've come to see that perhaps there is only now, what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now in his famous I Have a Dream speech. The now we are in, right now, is fierce, beautiful, and bursting with a need for truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation. We are witnessing right now the turning of an age. And all of this is happening now. Now is the whole past. Now is the present. And now is right now the entire future. Now is where we cast the die for the next generation, and we decide whether they will live in love or they will live having to go to battle with the small circles of love we've created, constructed according to our preferences. I usually don't talk this much about love, and maybe it's a mistake. I'm not so sure. Let me first say what I think love is not. Love is not complacency. Love is not a passive acceptance of violence, whether that violence is physical, legal, institutional, or systemic. Love is not ignoring our conscience when we feel it is pricked and we see harm being done, violence being done toward any living creature that can breathe just like us. Love is not a passive sense of anything goes without any involvement in the world. Love, like hope, must be active if it is to be made manifest while you and I are still breathing in our bodies and are still alive. But love is bigger than our preferences, bigger than any circle we can cast on our own. I read an excerpt from Lama Rod Owens, who is black, queer, and a Tibetan Buddhist Lama. He wrote a book called Love and Rage. And in this excerpt, I found something completely startling, but something that resonated with me as possibly true, and I want to share it with you. He said, "We must love the unlovable. We must love the unlovable." The first thought I had when I read that was perhaps that is the best definition I've found of what it means to be an American. Someone who has to love the unlovable. Each of us here, including myself, have our circle of people who are inside that circle and people who are outside that circle. I think it is quite a task to follow our conscience in protecting every living creature from violence, while at the same time casting our circle of love bigger than our preferences. I know no other way to save ourselves from hatred, bitterness, and despair in this next era that we are living in. I know of no other way to save this precious earth where we all live. Many, rightfully so, will say this goes against our biology, that we are built to be tribal, and we are hardwired to cast our circles according to those who look like us, act like us, and think like us. They may not be wrong, but we will be guaranteed to destroy ourselves and our precious planet if we continue in that same way. If we don't live into a new era, a new way of thinking and imagining, a new way of being, I don't know what will be left for us. We may never want to cast our circle of love beyond our preferences. We may never, ever want to, but we'll need to if we intend to survive and thrive in this new era. It seems to be true, especially during this past year, that we fundamentally belong to one another. None of us is outside that circle. Even if you live in a remote part of the world, away from human civilization, you cannot get out of that circle. You are included, and you belong. What one of us does impacts all of us. This is beyond theoretical at this point. We are beyond hearing stories of the butterfly effect. We are living examples of that fact right now, today. I would not be who I am without those who hold beliefs that I find unlovable. That is a startling fact. Many of those people may be our family members, our neighbors, our employers. I'm not saying you need to love their values, but I do think we are being asked to love the unlovable. To love a people and a nation so mired in violence and ignorance, seeking to find a place to settle down in peace. For me, personally, I can only do this through imagination. I'm really quite limited by my preferences, and it feels close to impossible to cast a circle so large nobody is left out. Not just nobody from the present, nobody from the past, and nobody from the future. Even if I think this is impossible to practice completely, I can imagine it. Let's try that just for a moment. See if you could actually imagine that. A circle of love so large that nobody is left out. Just take a moment. I can imagine it. Can you? I think this kind of imagination is the kind of soul work we need to undertake in this new era. When I allow myself to imagine a love beyond my preferences, I feel truly free. It makes me smile, actually. Free from judgment, free from hatred, free from fear. And yet I am also compelled by an act of hope, as Joanna Macy writes, to love this beautiful world and all her creatures, large and small. An act of hope demands that I protect the vulnerable, which is all of us, and this earth, from violence. It demands that if I can alleviate suffering and the conditions that cause suffering for another, I will do it. It demands that if society is built to cause premature death toward those of a certain skin color or employment status, that society must be reimagined. Active hope demands that we protect each other's bodies in this body politic. And yet, no person is my enemy. My only enemy is a lack of imagination. Every person belongs in that circle of love. Every living creature that can breathe in a body just like me. That includes you. It includes me. It includes all of us in this now. Please pray with me. Spirit of love, we are grateful to be alive on this day. Please help us to live with integrity and heart into this new era. Please help us to live with humility and help us recognize our arrogance. If we feel hope, please fan that hope until it becomes active hope. An active hope that can be felt throughout the entire world through the way that we can love our families, love our neighbors, and love ourselves. For all those who feel a sense of shame and judgment, may they feel peace in knowing that they are always in that circle. And please help us to serve as reminders of that never-ending love for each other. All this we pray. Amen.
Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed and hunger. Love will guide us through the hard night. If
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we meet again.
As you depart, please remember the one great fact. You are loved and never truly alone.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, now I'm found. Was blind, now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Can you sing the last verse with me? When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun.